everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on volume 32 of Ace of the Diamond. I'm catching up. I'm catching up, and I'm a little bit scared. I'm also kind of floored because Kelsey in the Discord recently told me that we were talking on Patreon about like me catching up with the manga and where it's at, and that very soon, very soon, I will be for a very brief time caught up with you all. When we get to the end of volume 34, which is supposed to end at chapter 310, I will technically be reacting to it the moment that it gets translated to English. And so for that first brief 5 to 7 days, I will be caught up with everyone via Patreon. So I'm like, wow, okay, that's kind of a freaky thing. But Kelsey was telling me in the Discord that back when I started the anime for Act 2, which seems like forever ago, that was around the time that chapter 282 was going on, which I just finished. I was like, what? So, and she was saying that there were like breaks and the chapters just, are week to week. And then, that can, all things considered, that's still like 20 something weeks worth of chapters. And then you add some breaks in there and yeah, it all adds up. So that's crazy. So we did the math, and apparently I'll have this volume, the next volume, and then I'll probably have to wait about a month, about 4 weeks. As long as there are no breaks, about 4 weeks until volume 34's content is ready to go. So that's fine. 4 weeks off from Ace of the Diamond, can do. The problem is going to be that once chapter 310 is over, which is where volume 34 will end, then I'll have to wait 9 weeks until volume 35. And so then my watch will begin. I will be Jon Snow. My Dia watch will begin, and you all will black box me in the Discord as I wait patiently for volume 35's contents to go in. But we ended last volume. Last volume, it's 2-1. Sato has got the lead. I'm excited. We're in the top of the 6th. Looking up at the scoreboard now, the first page of chapter 284 is up here. We're at the top of the 6th. It's 2-1. Sato has the lead, which is something that Sato, we don't always get into this situation, so I'm a little worried because I'm like, Sato's not used to having like a lead this early on in the game. Usually if Sato pulls off a lead, it's like a miracle one in the last final inning, so everything went okay last volume, which has me nervous because it's Terajima, and I'm like, Terajima, what are you planning, right? Because last volume was, the only crazy thing that really happened was, well, Shirasu got hit. He got a dead ball, but he was more mad about not being able to hit, and also had a concussion. It's not been confirmed, but he went head first in the wall. So that's the only traumatic things that happened last volume. But otherwise, everything was really kosher. And I know Terajima. I'm like, what are you planning, sir? Because I know how this song and dance goes. So I don't know. Faria was talking about a fever. I'm like, I don't know if it's his fever of playing baseball or if he's literally about to burn up. I don't know. I don't know if Faria is going to pitch. I've never thought he was going to pitch the whole game. I just don't think that's going to happen. I feel like this final game is going to be a mirror of last year, only the pitcher relay is, fingers crossed, knock on wood, going to work this time instead of not working in the last season. So I don't know. But the question is, how long will Faria go? Because he's been pitching really good, but he's been going all out for 6 innings. And yeah, so is he going to be able to start? Is he going to be able to do the bottom of the 6th and go into the 7th inning? Or what are we going to do? That is the big question. So I've got my notes ready. I'm excited. I just can't believe we're almost caught up. So we're going to be doing chapters 284 to 292. Crazy talk. Now, as of right now, there is not a thumbnail, a cover photo for volume 32 yet. We don't know who's going to be on the cover, so that's exciting. So I'll just probably have like a work in progress thumbnail until that cover comes out, and then I'll update it on YouTube and Patreon once that updated thumbnail gets ready to go. But for now, we'll probably just put like an image from one of the chapters or something like that to take its place. Gee, the nice thing about Diet is that there's lots of iconic images, so I will not be short on options. Because last volume, there were so many great double spreads, I was like, I didn't know what to do in the thumbnail, and then I was like, Shirasu's dam is pretty, 280 was one of my favorite chapters with the sore loser contest. As much as I liked Mei and Miyuki's backstory, the Shirasu flashback was just beautiful. We're like 600 chapters into this entire series, like if you count Act 1 and Act 2, and to still have a chapter that's about a character's backstory that comes out and surprises you. How do you do it, Terajima? Just tell me your secrets. You craft really good characters and a very engaging story. That's how. So I've wasted enough time. We are going to start volume 32 of Ace of the Diamond and see what happens in the semifinal. Bottom of the sixth. Well, we're still at the top of the sixth. So let's see what happens here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. It was only a matter of time before Whiteboard-kun was going to come out for Ace of the Diamond, but the time is now. This is Whiteboard-kun. He helps me explain all things, and I have waited how many volumes of Ace of the Diamond and how many seasons and how many episodes to bring Whiteboard-kun out, but you know what? I thought about it after starting looking over my notes for this volume, but there's so many parallels and so many comparisons with our players in this that it needed to come out because I needed to just make a board here and just talk about it, right? So, but let's get the first thing out of the way. The thing thinking about this, Terajima, is this game it's just solving the debate of who's gonna win over Miyuki and Mei. like Miyuki and Mei. We talk about Furuya and Sawamura being rivals, and yeah, they are. They are rivals. They're really healthy rivals. They've had a great rivalry this whole series, but I would argue, like, Terajima seems to make, like, the main rivalry in this entire series is between our exes, Mei and Miyuki. Like, these two. The whole thing, mutual negation, that chapter title, I'm like, it's the magnet thing we talked about in the last volume. It's exactly that. So, I wanted to bring this up here. I'm going to set Whiteboard-kun a little bit closer so y'all can see. And just kind of talk about this as we go. And I'm not going to, like, as my chair's, like, caught on it. I'm not going to talk, use Whiteboard-kun for every chapter. But as things get brought up, I'm going to kind of, like, make a little Venn diagram here. Because I've been noticing some things, right? Chapter 284, The Amazing People. Furuya this volume. Furuya, my dude. There's a little part in me that wants to get a little jealous of Furuya at times on Sawamura's behalf. The Taurus empathy comes flooding out, and I want to get like a little bit jealous of him on Sawamura's behalf. But then Sawamura, he humbles me and is like, no, Romania, it's cool. Sawamura being so supportive of Furuya in this volume and how good Furuya's been doing. And Furuya just coming into his own. Like, you can't help but not like Furuya in this volume. It's like the most he's ever talked. He didn't speak it out loud, but it's the most, like, internal monologue we've gotten from Furuya this whole series. And there's so many things that's like, oh my god, like, all the comparisons. I just want to sit these boys down and have them talk to one another and see how similar they are. That's the crazy thing, right? But Furuya striking out with 2 change-ups in a row. Mei showing his... Okay, so Furuya was struck out as Mei uses 2 change-ups in a row, and it's Mei showing his power. And Furuya saying, it's frustrating how amazing they all are. Right? So we're gonna put Furuya in blue. And Furuya saying here that it's frustrating. It's frustrating how amazing his competitors are, right? His competition's so amazing, he gets frustrated by it. He's like, I'm not at that level yet, but I need to be, right? And then Tojo he felt the hit to the 3rd, and then Mei with this little badger face where he's like, he finally gets his 3 outs, right? And he's like, I want to send it out to the park right now because he's going to be first up to bat when Inashira goes to bat. But yeah, Mei is clearly frustrated that they got the 2-1 runs. Because right now, the score is still 2-1. And the game, this chapter 292, I'll put this down here so y'all can see. Chapter 292 ends in the 8th inning. Right? So it's the bottom of the 8th. I'm like, are we gonna finish next volume? I don't feel like we are. Are we gonna finish the next volume? Oh my god. So yeah. Anyway. But yeah, so we cut over to Ugamori, them watching. My OTP's there. Now and Umemiya, they're just there looking at each other, giving each other a side eye, being all coy. I love it. It's great. I love that Hoshida's like, I want to bat right now. Like, Hoshida, the 3rd year say throughout this entire volume, they're like, we want to hit Naramiya's pitches, and Hoshida's like just sitting there ready to go. It's like the spirit of the bat is in Kink's restaurant right now. And it's great. But also being kept in. I want to talk about that real quick. He was only kept in for an inning. Okay? Only kept in for an inning, granted. But that is the one thing where everyone in the stands is like, is he okay? Like, that is the one situation where I was like, it's a plot convenience, right? It's a plot convenience because it's a fake out, narratively. Like, Terajima keeps Aso in for one inning, and then he switches Furuya out, and Furuya goes to the outfield and takes his place. So on the one hand, good. Because as soon as Aso went back in, I was like, Terajima, are you setting up for this to have been a terrible idea and Aso's gonna like miss a pitch or have like something with his head happen and him like cause a blunder? No, he actually catches a ball, surprising everyone. But for the moment, I was like, is this about to be a really bad decision? But no, it was just, it's a narrative thing. I get what Terajima does it in hindsight, but in the moment, I was kind of with the crowd, like, was he checked out? Is he fine? He says he's fine, but it's Aso. It's Aso we're talking about. I would go with a second opinion. I was just kind of amazed at the moment, but it's fine. And then Katioka says that Furuya is almost at 100 pitches, and he's like, Sawamura be ready to go in. So it's like, they know, they have learned that it's better. Like Ochiai says, keep Furuya in the outfield. So if something happens, then you have the option to put Furuya back in while his energy is not completely depleted, right? Because you don't have Kawakami to fall back on. You just don't have that option. So Furuya needs to be something you can rely on. And Miyuki, he's thinking Mei must be frustrated as Mei comes up to bat, and he's like, I won't let you have your revenge. And Mei meanwhile, is not thinking of Furuya in this moment. He's not thinking of Miyuki, he's thinking of Furuya. So we're going to put Mei, I'm going to put Miyuki right here. I'm going to put Miyuki right there. And I'm going to put Mei, I'm going to put Sawamura here in red, because red seems like Sawamura's color. Even though Mei is Inashiro, we're going to give him pink. So we're going to put Mei right here, right? We're going to put Mei right there. There we go. Got our whole crew here, right? And so Mei is just focused on Furuya. He's mad at Furuya. He's like, striking you out wasn't good enough. I want to hit off of you and do that, right? And God, he's like, bring it on, Furuya. And so Furuya, he has that thing, have you ever considered going pro? And he goes back to that question. It has this like scary face that Mei and Miyuki are both like. So I want to make a note that they both have a reaction to Furuya. Like, they're both kind of confused. Mei and Miyuki are very similar. They really are. They are very similar characters. They are the negatives on the magnet pole, right? That's why they don't work well together, because they're too similar, right? And we'll talk about that when we get to the last chapter, because Itsuki and Sawamura, I may be changing my tune slightly on my shipping wars. Ever so slightly. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about this, right? Ever so slightly, perhaps. But yeah, Mei and Miyuki are both like, what? And so here's the thing with Furuya. Chapter 285, it's all right here. And Furuya, he starts to strain. And Miyuki makes note that when he overthinks, he starts to strain a little bit. He gets too stiff. When he gets too caught up in his own head, he starts to strain. But Furuya, he's thinking about Miyuki's words about going pro, right? And here's the crazy thing about Miyuki and all of this. He says he strains, but he overpowers Mei and also catches the pop fly. So I guess it was a good thing that Aso is out there. He manages to catch the ball from Mei. Thank goodness. But Furuya says it will continue. The road will wind on and on. Furuya's reaction to the idea of there being an endless road is the opposite of Sawamura's, which is so fascinating to me. That Furuya, he is excited. He is excited about all the pitchers to face. He is excited about the future and that there could be so much to face. Whereas that is kind of in polar opposite to Sawamura going into this game. Sawamura was kind of daunted by the endless pitchers, right? And if you want to make a shipping war out of it, if you want to go to the shipper route of it, Sawamura's big detriment, it's not necessarily the endless amount of pictures that are daunting to Sawamura, but it's the fact that he would have to face them without Miyuki. Sawamura wants Miyuki to be his catcher, and he's kind of, you know, a little bit intimidated by the fact that he'll have to keep going on this endless road, and will Miyuki always be there for him and be his battery? And the answer is no. Next year he's not going to have Miyuki. So Sawamura, there's a little bit more tie to Miyuki in this case, whereas in Furuya's case, Furuya's not really thinking about Miyuki. He's thinking about all of the idea of facing all these other pitchers in the future, and then he could go pro, right? So it's fascinating. But he's at 92 pitches. Miyuki calls a timeout. Miyuki's like, okay, we need to check and make sure everything's okay. And he tells him to watch his pace. And so Miyuki in this moment, he connects to Furuya and says, we both have regrets from Senbatsu. So what's interesting about Miyuki and Furuya's relationship is that I feel like Miyuki can somewhat project himself onto Furuya, and he sees Furuya like kind of in a similar place as he is. And so I think that one of the things Miyuki likes about Furuya is that Furuya has constant potential. He always has this potential to get better. And he thinks the same way about Sawamura. He thinks that both of these two have so much potential. He's like, they just get better and better, and that makes me get better and better. And we'll talk about that whole thing with Mei. But I feel like Miyuki sometimes opens up to Furuya because he sees a lot of himself in Furuya. Miyuki doesn't know how to read Sawamura off the field, which is the funniest thing, because Sawamura, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about how it's kind of perfect the way Terajima has created this. But Furuya does not give Miyuki any worry emotionally. Like, Miyuki can kind of read Furuya, and he can kind of see through him and see what he's thinking. And he's like, okay, I can see what you're doing because I can relate myself to you. So he kind of projects. And I can understand now with that comment, we both have regrets for Senbatsu. I can kind of see why he opened up to Furuya on top of the hill and not Sawamura, because he kind of has that experience as Furuya and he feels like they can connect on that level. Now, he should still tell Sawamura, but that's a different discussion for a different time. But yeah, it makes sense, right? Why he says that in the timeout. And he says, and Miyuki, here's the interesting thing. Miyuki gives Furuya kind of like a little bit of a selfish motivation, and Furuya, what I love is Furuya changes that to something that Miyuki's kind of like, oh. And what he does is Miyuki says, let's go back and we'll take Koshin. Just the two of us, right? Which we know Miyuki from day one has been like, I want to motivate my pitchers no matter what, right? Which makes Miyuki kind of hard to read as genuine sometimes, because you're like, if you're a shipper, you're like, is he really being genuine to Sawamura? The answer is yes, and I'll tell you why later. but it's kind of like, he's like, you know, he kind of makes it this intimate moment between him and Furuya, like it's, let's just you and I go to Koshin, come on. Like, he's trying to encourage and get Furuya out of his slump, because that's his job as a catcher. And then Furuya counters that by saying, no, let's go there as a team. So Furuya wants to take Koshin as a team, which I love that answer, because then Miyuki later is like, oh, together as a team, huh? So yeah, Furuya's thinking about them all together as a team going, and Miyuki's like, oh, okay. All right, you're not being selfish in this regard. You're thinking of everybody. And it's like, yes, which I love that about Furuya in this. It's great. And so from there, it's all about Sawamura's. I love that Sawamura's plea for communication. Like when they get out of the timeout, Sawamura, he's like, yeah, it's great. You two need to get on the same page. And I'm like, everything Sawamura says in that moment in chapter 285, everything he says in that moment is basically like a plea for Miyuki to communicate with him the same way he's communicating with Furuya. He just doesn't realize that's what he's saying. He's like, it's a good thing you guys are on the same page. That'll help everything be better between you two. I'm like, Sawamura does not realize he's basically asking Furuya, or asking Miyuki after the game, to communicate on the same level that he's communicating with Furuya. I'm like, oh my God, Sawamura. But Miyuki and Sawamura have a much different communication than Furuya and Miyuki, and we'll talk about it as we go. But I about died at that. He's like, being on the same page is important. It's all for the better and to make you feel better. I'm like, Sawamura, it's like just a plea to be on the same page as Miyuki. I'm like, if Miyuki and Sawamura do not talk after this game about this whole pro thing, I'm going to be a little upset because I'm like, Terajima, you brought this up. You made Sawamura hear this conversation. Now do something with it. So it better come up. Better come up. But yeah, Miyuki talking about that. And Miyuki realizing that he can't fall behind with Furuya. That he's like, he sees Furuya's potential. He sees that potential from Senbatsu. And he has to keep up. Right? Which is what Miyuki likes. Miyuki likes a challenge. He wants to be forced to keep up with something. And we'll talk about that with him and May. And so then we see Sawamura's advice about what does it say? Yeah, he says Sawamura's advice about the fielders. Sawamura's like, okay, don't be afraid to depend on your fielders, Furuya, you can do this. And what I like is that Miyuki, this is where I get a little jealous of Furuya a little bit and like a little greedy. Is because Miyuki, he says twice in this volume, he's like, you guys. He's like, you guys. And he says, you never fail to amaze me. And I feel like that's kind of a cop-out from Terajima, ever so slightly. Like, yes, Miyuki is constantly amazed by Furuya and Sawamura. They are his duo. And the jealous Taurus in me wants to monopolize Miyuki, wants Sawamura to monopolize him all to himself. And like, Furuya's not in the love triangle. There is no love triangle. It's just Sawamura and Miyuki. The jealous Taurus wants to do that. But the truth of it is that Miyuki does love Furuya and Sawamura, right? Now, shipping-wise, I don't ship Miyuki with Furuya at all. I think that they're more like a Chris, Sawamura dynamic. We'll talk about that too. But I think that Miyuki, he does care about both of them as pitchers. And he tries not to play favorites or choose one over the other. And they have a very different dynamic, each of them do, with Miyuki, which is great. But he's like, you guys never fail to amaze me. I feel like that's such a cop-out from Terajima. He's like, I don't want to get, one ship over the other. They're both equal to Miyuki, but we'll talk about Sawamura and him. We'll talk about it. There's moments in here I was like, no, Miyuki's into Sawamura. He just doesn't want to admit it. Right? And so then Tadano. I love that Tadano, he's like talking about cutting Furuya off, and Furuya, and he's like, Tadano's like, oh, I'm going to cut him off and we're going to stop him right here. And then there's this big moment where Furuya is larger than life over Tadano. And we'll see that mirrored with May larger than life over Haruichi. So it's a great mirror there. But I love the double spreads of May and Furuya. So we want to make note of that both Furuya, we're going to come down here, and May have these moments where they overpower the batters. Okay, so we have those moments. Lots of crisscrossing in these chapters, right? And so I love Furuya saying, the road appeared with Sato when Miyuki caught my pitches. And so here's the thing too, and this is why the jealous Taurus in me gets, sedated a bit, because yeah, Miyuki, he talks about how he's so proud of both Furuya and Sawamura, and they never cease to amaze him, right? Then Furuya comes right back, and he says that Sato basically became his home because of Miyuki catching his pitches, and then because of the rivalry and growth with Sawamura. I loved that part of that chapter where Furuya is like, when I found a rival I could compete with, and we both grew stronger together. And it's like, honestly, as frustrating as that rivalry was the first season of the anime, it so pays off, because seeing how much they've grown together and how good of friends they've become, like, I would argue Furuya and Sawamura are like best friends. Like, they're totally like in sync with one another. They're both like connecting to one another. It's so healthy, their rivalry. He's like, I can express myself through baseball. I can be willful and I can fight. And we'll talk about that with chapter 286 because that's like the sweetest chapter ever. But he talks about how he can fight and express himself. And it's because of Miyuki and Sawamura. And now I would like, and again, I feel like Miyuki is more like a Chris figure to Furuya than anything romantic, right? And I feel like Miyuki's kind of, I feel like, if you like somebody, it makes it harder for you sometimes to interact with them until you both admit that you like each other. It's always kind of awkward because you don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing because you like that person and you're afraid of like stepping on toes and you're going to ruin the moment. But then there's some people that you are not attracted to romantically and you just click with them and it's like you can just do all these things and it's just an instant connection, but there's nothing romantic about it at all. That's how I feel like Miyuki and Furuya are. There's nothing romantic's going on here, so it's very easy for them to communicate with one another. This is awkward city sometimes because Miyuki's like, well, I just, and Sawamura's like, well, I just, they're both like dodging around the bullet and it's like, just kiss already, and get it over with. So, but that's how I feel this relationship is, especially after this volume. I'm like, nope, that's exactly how Terajima has cemented it. But yeah, but I just love that with Furuya, and it passes on to chapter 286. With the whole thing with his mom, we got to see his dad. We got to see Furuya's dad. We got to see like a shadow of him. We saw his hair. Now, I will make a note. Furuya's dad, just from the silhouette of him and his hair, I'm going to say that Furuya takes after. He's got the Kaminato gene thing going on where Furuya takes after the mom and the grandpa. Her side of the family is who Furuya takes after, not his dad. So, which is kind of funny. But we do see him. He's there. And his mom's so worried because she's like, he's really withdrawn. He's going to be away from home. He's not good at talking to one another. Sometimes he lashes out because he has like a bad attitude because he doesn't have anybody to talk to, which is kind of funny to think about Furuya having a bad attitude. But then I guess in the first season, he was kind of cold because he wasn't super friends with anybody until this ray of sunshine came into his life. But she worries that he's not going to be able to express himself. And then we see in this chapter that he finds it. He found it with baseball, and he found it with some Sawamura and Miyuki with his team. And it's so damn sad and sweet and precious. And I'm like, that's so good. He found it with Eijun and Miyuki in baseball. And I love when he comes off the field, Katio, because like, it's not to be understated how important it was that you defended after we scored. He's like, your defense after that inning where we scored is so important. And he was at 99 pitches. 99. Our Furuya. And what I love is that he keeps him in the outfield, 7th inning. Ochiai's being quite pessimistic. He was like, well, if something happens to Sawamura, I'm like, don't you dare. Don't you dare, Ochiai. Don't you be doing that. No, it's just there, right? And Sawamura, that whole spread where Sawamura comes up to Furuya. And here's the thing, though. Again, we're going to talk about this throughout the volume. There's so many little moments. But Miyuki makes the note that he says that Furuya could only go all out because of Sawamura. He had faith that Sawamura, he knew Sawamura had his back and was strong enough to take the baton from him and do just as good. And so that gave him the confidence to go all out because it's like, I know if I exhaust myself, Sawamura's got my back and he's just as good as me and we're going to be fine. And Miyuki saying that is huge because that's Miyuki having faith and knowing that that's the case, right? Him saying that. And then Sawamura being there to back him up. That double spread of them connecting it, of them just like passing on, being like, I got this. Yeah, I got you, man. Like that's just so good, right? And just connecting it. Sawamura. So he goes in is it the 8th inning? I think it's the 7th inning. Yeah, it goes in the 7th inning. I will say, we were talking about this in the Discord, that there had come up the idea about the dual aces. And we were talking about the third year, if Sawamura and Furuya would be dual aces or not. And here's my stance on it. I'm okay with it, especially after this chapter, because seeing that double spread of him and of those two together, and how both of them have that ace energy, just in different ways. Like Furuya's is like this quiet strength and like reliability, and Sawamura's is this constant encouragement and reliability. I feel like both of them could be aces. Here's my thing. I am fine with dual aces because it means that both Furuya and Sawamura are ace. It either has to be one of two ace. Either it's dual aces and they're both the ace, or it's Sawamura. I'm like, we did not go through all this shit for the last three seasons and how many volumes for Sawamura to not be the ace his third year. Absolutely not. So I'm fine with the dual aces as long as Sawamura and Furuya are aces together. I'm totally down with that. I'm cool with it. They're both super strong. It's fine. We'll talk about that later with May. We'll talk about that. But I'm fine with it as long as they both are the ace. Now, next year, if it was just Furuya and not Sawamura, I'd have a lot to say, Terajima. But as long as you keep Sawamura as the ace or one of them, totally fine. Can do that. But yeah, with that pose, I can believe it. So the two getting along perfectly, Kanemaru gets out. I felt bad for Yui. I really did. I felt bad for Yui because he came in there as the pinch hitter. Asao cursed it. It's the curse of Asao. Terajima's like, all right, back to having Asao curse everything. It is because I loved Masashi was like, why not? I love the first year's reaction. Masashi's like flaming and he's like, why not me? Why wasn't I the pinch hitter? And then you cut over to Akamatsu and he's like, I'm so jealous. Like he's sitting there with his devil horns. Like, I'm so jealous. And then I love that Sawamura's like, Koshi, what about you? What's your first year commentary? And Koshi's like, I don't have any. But I felt so bad. Aso's like, I infused the soul of the Man of Steel. And I'm like, Aso, you cursed that bat for Yui. You should have stayed away. Because, yeah, Yui gets out and Mei looks just like Furuya was to Tadano. That same intimidating factor. It was crazy. So then chapter 287, the Ace's entrance. I'm a big Sawamura stan, although I will admit, the very first half of this volume, Furuya, it made me really love Furuya because Furuya is just out there. Furuya's so simple. He just wants to do the best for his team. He's not selfish. He wants to, he's wrestling with these ideas that he could be good enough to go pro, and he wants to do that, and he wants to get better and improve himself, and you can't blame him for that. So Furuya is just really wholesome, and I love that we find out that he's, come full circle and been able to like be the best he can be because of Sato and baseball, right? So the Ace's entrance, that cover where Sawamura is following behind Furuya, but he has the Ace number, that's basically this whole series. That Sawamura has been chasing after his rival this whole time, and he finally gets to be where he's wanted to be this whole time. But he's still working with Furuya, right? So that's really good. I like that Kurmochi, well, I don't like that Kurmochi gets out by Shirakawa. No, that's 3 outs. Tadano! We're gonna put Tadano over here, okay? He's in this too, right? Oh, Tadano Itsuki. My dude, I kind of fell for Tadano in this volume a bit because we'll talk about him with May, but he's just crying over May's pitches. Tadano is very similar to Sawamura. They are. I've been comparing Tadano to every player possible in this series, but in this volume, Tadano he materializes how he's very similar to Sawamura. He's very emotional. Sawamura is very emotional. Figures. I don't know if Tadano, I don't know what Itsuki's astrological sign is. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But he's crying over May's pitches. Our sweet bean. And yeah, May being like, quit crying, it isn't over yet. And Fukuda starts going in about how he's like, let's bring Furuya down. He's going to be exhausted going into the 7th. We got this. And like, he's like mid-speech. And then they announce that they're substituting Sawamura in. And I have to say, I'm really happy. I was really worried because during Senbatsu, I got so frustrated because everybody was dogging Sawamura and they were all like fangasming over Furuya, which Furuya did great in Senbatsu, don't get me wrong. But I'm like, they were just dissing our boy, Sawamura. And in this, I was so happy that once he came in, it was like, there wasn't like everybody going, oh, Furuya's out. It was like, no, the girls, like Haruno and all of them were like so excited for Sawamura. All the third years were like, mm-hmm. And like everybody in the stands was like, it's time for the ace. And everybody was doing really good, right? And I love it. It was great. Like everybody's reactions were perfect. Like May was mid-drink and he was like, like May was in the stands going, he's like when Sawamura came on, it was a great face. It was wonderful. Chris and Tetsu and all the third years looked so proud. It was wonderful. Hoshino was ready to bat at Kinks. Like, he was so excited because Hoshino knows Sawamura from the last game. That was wonderful. And then I love that Shunshin, Sonata, and even like Umemiya and Mukai, they were all so happy. They were like, yeah, let's see this guy pitch. And then Sawamura's like, greetings, like he normally does. And then Sawamura being this ray of sunshine, and Mei's like, why does Furuya get to quit while he's ahead? What is this? Like, Mei, this chapter. Why is Furuya quitting while he's ahead? And Kunitomo, all Kunitomo goes is like, neck crack. Like, that's all he does. I'm like, oh my God. Like, that's a sign that Kunitomo's a little bit worried. That he does the neck crack. He's a little bit anxious. Because Sawamura is a little bit uncharted waters, right? And so then Amahisa, he's quiet at first. Which is so interesting. That everybody's getting all riled up about Sawamura. I thought Amahisa would. But he's not. He's super quiet in this volume, which is quite curious. And the crowd, I like that they're like, man, they're taking Furuya out while he's like on his game, on a roll. And the one guy's like, nah, he walked too many people. So the crowd is not just like blindly worshiping Furuya's feet. They're acknowledging that, no, yeah, Furuya had a couple slip-ups. He was doing really good, but he wasn't perfect, right? And so, but they all think that Kawakami's still an option. They're like, don't worry, they still got Kawakami in the wings. I'm like, no, they don't. But it's nice that you think so, crowd. And I love that Carlos says that Sawamura is a different kind of pain than Furuya. Yeah, they're both pain. Different kinds of pain, right? And Inashiro's just praising Sawamura. They're like praising him and talking about like how badass he was. But Mei's like, harumph. Mei is like not having it, right? And I love that Mei, he's like, he was not impressed with Sawamura last year. And he's like, what's all this hype about this guy? I don't get it. Is it all for real? Are you really awesome or are you not? Like, he's just all, like, getting all questioning of Sawamura. And he asks if Sawamura can keep up with the game. He's like, this game's so intense, you could be able to keep up. Like, Mei is instantly doubting Sawamura. It's like, wow, it's not like you're jealous or anything. And so then I love this moment between Miyuki and Sawamura. Again, talking about Miyuki and Sawamura's dynamic and how different it is than Furuya and Miyuki. Like Miyuki praises Furuya, but it's almost like Miyuki praises Furuya to build him up. Like, Miyuki recognizes that Furuya has all this potential, and maybe Furuya doesn't see it. And Miyuki always feels like he needs to like lift Furuya up, being like, hey, you're doing good. Hey, you did great. Like, come on, like, let's be chums. You can do this. Everything's great. Have you considered going pro? You really should. Like, I feel like he gives Furuya a lot of praise because he feels like Furuya needs it. But Miyuki and Sawamura are a different battery. It's a different kind of praise, and Sawamura doesn't realize it yet. But Miyuki, he comes up to Sawamura and says, hey, aren't you Mr. Popular now? Listen to all them in the stands cheering you on. He's giving Sawamura a genuine praise, for the record. Sawamura goes over and he's like, no. Sawamura is humbled. So Sawamura is humbled by the crowd's praise. And I think this is why, one of the reasons why Miyuki likes Sawamura is because Mei feeds off that praise. Mei's is like, yes, bask in me. Mei gets upset when you don't praise him as much as you should. He gets mad at Sato in the last volume because he was like, why is everybody cheering them on? We're the ones in the lead. We deserve the praise. Like, Mei's such a diva. And Mei even gets mad at Tadano being like, you're stealing my thunder. And so Mei gets so jealous when the spotlight is not on him. And Sawamura almost doesn't even want the spotlight on him. Sawamura's like, oh yeah, no, they're not, I'm not Mr. Popular. No. I'm just here doing my job. And I think that's why Miyuki likes him. Because he's like, and then he says, I'm counting on you, Ace. Miyuki doing the whole, I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you, Ace. And Sawamura blushing at that Ace. Sawamura's big blush face. Because he's like, Ace. Come on! Furuya's not blushing at Miyuki, and Miyuki's not giving him that kind of praise. It's like, oh my god, I freaking love it. But yeah, chapter 288, Deep Breaths on the Mound. Am I going to have to switch Whiteboard-kun over? I might have to. We'll see. But I Deep Breaths on the Mound, chapter 288, it had me extremely nervous and then really happy because we had Jinjuji. I really liked that we got inside his head a little bit, and he was like talking about how Furuya and Sawamura have bothered him since last year, and we see him up in the stands. Like, he wasn't even a regular on the roster, and he's like, you two were always bothering me. And I just love the idea that Sawamura's osh was like in his nightmares. Like the only vision he has of Sawamura is that osh and a little figure running across the field. It's hilarious. I love it. But Miyuki makes note that he's a little bit stiff. And the reporter, they set this whole chapter up, the first half of this chapter, they set it up like it is going to be doom and gloom. And I was starting to get a little worried reading it. I was like, are we really doing this? Because they were setting it up where the reporter's like, you know, this could be a bad decision. If this wasn't made at the right time, it's going to be the worst decision ever. I'm like, have some faith in our boy, right? And here's the thing. Kunitomo is terrifying. He like looks at them and is like, do the damn thing. Like, don't be intimidated by this guy, right? And it's like all dark and scary and everything. And Sawamura, he says that he is ready to move past last year and avenge from it. He's like, I'm not going to get worked up. He's like, he starts to get worked up. He's like, I'm not going to half-ass this. He's like, no, this is not going to be like last year. And he starts to get a little bit in his head, a wee bit, and has the two balls, right? And it's like everybody starts to get a little bit worried about the two balls. And at that moment, I was like, when Chris and Pai and Tetsu were like, I don't know, we're going to have a bad moment. I'm like, and Miyuki starts to panic too, right? That's what I'm talking about. Miyuki starts to panic. And then Sawamura, like in this moment, Sawamura realizes, he's like, oh, I forgot to do my like pre-game deep breaths. Forgot to do that. Hold on, guys. He's like, wait. Gotta do my pregame stretch. This will take 5 seconds. And he actually does the deep breaths to calm himself down. He doesn't need Miyuki to tell him what to do. He calms himself down by himself and does it all. And Miyuki, if you look back at that panel when he's like, my profound apologies. And it's like, because he apologized to Jinjuji, and Jinjuji's like, what the hell? But Miyuki's face is so innocent in that moment, and so like, what? Like, just has this most innocent, like, doesn't know what to do look on his face. And Sawamura, I love that the crowd is like, is he just delicate or just that brazen? And I'm like, that, and they say it, they're like, that's Sawamura in a nutshell. All the Taurus energy, delicate and brazen, in one package. Welcome to hashtag Taurus Life. That's where we are. We're great. But Zono's like, take all the time you want. Zono's like, do it. Like, I love that Zono's in full support. And then Yui's like, hey, we did that once. And Koshu's like, oh my God. Koshu realizes, he's like, oh my God, I'm not surprised. And Yui's like, hey, we did that, and that did help. But yeah, and Jinjuji is like, are you serious? Come on, what are we doing? And I like the one guy is like, we're in the middle of a game, sir. And Sawamura's like, he lets it all soak in. And Miyuki is not sure what to do, but he says that he's going to trust his pitch. He's going to trust his pitch. He's not sure what to do, but he's going to trust his pitch, right? So, and the first year, and it works. And the first year's like, number 9. And he doesn't, like, there's a cutter. And Tadano, May looks so pissed. May's like, what? And Tadano is like, Sawamura rebuilt himself, like, on the mound. And he doesn't say it, but it's like, he rebuilt himself without the catcher. He didn't need Miyuki to rebuild him. And that is where I'm gonna like erase this or flip it over, and we're just gonna do the Venn diagram again, right? I can't believe I've already like flipped it over. This is why I've not used Whiteboard-kun in Ace of the Diamond, because I knew something like this was gonna happen, right? So let's just break it down, right? We've got Sawamura. had to go back. I was like, I'm not going to say all this. I'm just going to write it down. So what we know so far, going into this moment where Sawamura where Tadano is like, Sawamura rebuilt himself, and Carlos is like, well, I'm going to bring back the nostalgia of all your past trauma as we go into chapter 289. So here's what we have so far. Furuya, he is excited about the prospects to keep playing baseball. He wants to keep playing baseball. It's where he gets the chance to fight and be himself and express himself. So he's thinking about the prospects of going pro. He's like, he's starting to think about that and kind of being like, Miyuki's kind of opened his eyes to the possibility. And he's like, yeah, I kind of want to do that. He wants the team to do well so that he can keep playing with them. And he loves this team, wants to keep working with them, which is great. But he has faith in Sawamura. He was only able to do as well as he did today because he had faith in Sawamura. Sawamura is extremely supportive. He calms himself down. He does not have to rely on the catcher at this point to do it. He's like, no, I got this. I'm good. I'm self-sufficient, right? Self-sufficient. I can do it, right? He's humble and he wants to keep pitching with Miyuki. Like that's the thing about Sawamura. Sawamura hasn't really thought about the future that we know of beyond this year. He's here and now. Furuya's constantly thinking about the future and being told to think about the future by Ochiai and Miyuki and other people. Sawamura, nobody's really asked Sawamura what he wants to do after high school, which is kind of sad because he's our main character. It's like he's not really thought about the future. He's just living in the present, which is fine. But I really want him to have that conversation because right now all we know is that he wants to keep pitching with Miyuki, right? And then Miyuki wants to control the situation. Miyuki's kind of a control freak. But it's not so much like control freak in a bad way. He just wants to strategize and be in charge of the situation. Miyuki wants to be able to determine the outcome and predict what it's going to be, right? And have control over that. And here's where it gets a little frustrating, right? And this is where I want Miyuki and Sawamura to communicate more because I feel like Miyuki and Furuya are on a great wavelength. They read each other. Not that Furuya is a hard book to read once you figure him out. Once you've translated the language, the book's not hard to read. It's just getting that first page down, right? I feel like Miyuki feels really comfortable with Furuya because Furuya's pretty easy for him to read, right? Miyuki trusts Sawamura. He trusts him. He does. But at times, he's unsure of him. Like during this chapter, when Sawamura's calming himself down, Miyuki's like, do I call a timeout? What do I do? It looks like he has control of the situation, so I'm not going to do anything. Like Miyuki, at times, him and Sawamura are like on the same wavelength, like a bunch of gremlins, and it's like they're twins. It's unreal. But at other times, they have trouble reading one another. And it's not necessarily ever treated like a bad thing. They manage to make it work fine. But it's one of those situations where it's frustrating for us as the audience because we're like, you need to sit down and talk to your pitcher. Whether you are too uncomfortable to talk to Sawamura because you got other feelings going on, that's not our business. You need to talk to him. Because I'm like, Miyuki, you need to talk to Sawamura. Ask him about his future plans. Get to know him better. Communicate with him more. I feel like because Sawamura is so different than Miyuki, he doesn't quite have that. Again, it's like that comfort's not... Sawamura will make Miyuki open up and come out of his shell. That's what Miyuki's afraid of, I feel like. I feel like Miyuki is such a, introverted, private person, and Sawamura just wants to, crack open the nutshell and be like, what's inside? And Furuya's doesn't ask Miyuki any questions. So for Miyuki, that's great to talk to Furuya because Furuya's not going to push any buttons. He's not going to prod. He's not going to ask anything personal. Sawamura would be wanting to come to your home on Christmas and hang out with your family. And Miyuki's like, I'm ready for that. It's like Miyuki just has a wall there and he knows Sawamura wants to take a sledgehammer to it if he lets him. And I think that's where the line is kind of drawn there. But he's excited by Furuya's potential. We know that so far. I'm going to add more to this as we go, but this is where we're at. And then May is super self-sufficient and talented, but he's a freaking diva. This whole calming himself down, May could be capable of that, but he doesn't. Instead, he's hard to handle, and he wants to be in control. And that's where him and Miyuki have the hardest time. They're both two characters who are similar in that they want to be in control. They want to be the one that's in charge of the situation and the strategy, right? Whereas, and we'll talk about Tadano and Sawamura. We'll talk about that, right? We're going to talk about them in these chapters. But I just want to put this out here right now, right? So Carlos, chapter 289, Carlos attempts to get inside and play mind games with Sawamura, surprising nobody. And I love, okay, Chris in this chapter. Chris, I'm thinking of the fan fiction Crossfire because I'm like, I was having such Crossfire flashbacks with Chris in this. The Discord got me to read Crossfire. It's like 500,000 words, and it consumed an entire week where I read nonstop, but it was amazing. I was sitting there like on my phone, like just, I got nothing accomplished that entire week this summer because I was reading Crossfire. But Chris in this chapter, he's like, he makes two pleas. He tells Sawamura, he says, do not play his game. He's like, Sawamura, don't play his game. Don't fall for it. And then he tells Miyuki, he's like, make sure you guide him through it, Miyuki. And that's the thing. In this chapter, he says that, but does Miyuki guide him through it? Or does Sawamura figure out how to handle the situation? That's the thing. I feel like Sawamura might have pulled a little bit more of the weight in this chapter against Carlos. A bit, because he gets himself gathered up and does fine. So he's like, he rises to the challenge. And I love that Chris like, rise to the challenge and show them you're not what you once were. You're a different battery. You're better. And I'm like, oh, Chris senpai. Chris knows. I feel like Chris needs have sit Miyuki and Sawamura down in a room and be like, I'm going to mediate this session with you all. I feel like Chris needs to do that. But he corners Carlos. And I love that Amahisa, he's just like, he's kind of proud in that moment. Amahisa's like, yeah, you're doing this exactly the same way you did all of us in the last game. It's the first time we see Amahisa look kind of smug, where he's like, I know what he's doing. Like, Amahisa's starting to come out of his shell. I like it. And all the third years are excited. And, oh God, Sawamura, I love that he just, what does he do there? I love that it's just Sawamura shows how much he's grown. He's a different pitcher than he was last year. And May's face in that double spread. I love that double spread of Sawamura just being like, I'm a different person than last year. Because he gets that grounder and gets Carlos out. And then, or he doesn't get a grounder, but he's like shown us how much he's grown. And May's face. That's the first time that May is just like May realizes how good Sawamura has gotten. And I've been wanting to see that this whole time. And when we see that panel, I was like, that's what I've been wanting to see since the start of this game, is for May to acknowledge Sawamura. We're going to talk about it. But I was like, And then Carlos, we go to his backstory on meeting May. And he followed May from the moment that May recruited him. I do like that Carlos has always had the number 8. It's really cute. 8's my lucky number. So I was like, of course Carlos gets my lucky number. It's really cute. And that the team rubbed off on him and made him greedy. It made him greedy for victory and strength. And that's kind of Inishiro's thing. Inishiro's team is very greedy. They're kind of self-centered. They work together as a team because that's how the game is played, but they're all very self-centered. Whereas we've seen, with Haruichi, with Sawamura, with Furuya, they've all talked about the team. They were doing things for the team. And that's why we're doing this. And Miyuki, here's the thing. Miyuki's kind of greedy. He is a little self-centered, Miyuki is. It's taken 3 years for Miyuki to kind of come out of his shell and admit that he wants to do this for the team too. But at the start of the first year, Miyuki was kind of greedy too. Miyuki would have fit in very well with Inishiro in his mentality. He's very similar to Carlos and May and all of them. But he went with Sato instead, right? Because he wanted the challenge, right? And we'll talk about that with the last chapter. But I love that it goes to that, and then he hits the ball. That last page of chapter 289 where Carlos hit the ball, it was like, I really thought that for a second it was going to be like a home run, and I was like, oh my God. And it's not. It manages to go to Tojo. Tojo gets him out. And Sawamura, here's the thing. Sawamura, as soon as that inning's over, he goes up to Miyuki, right? Like Furuya, whenever Furuya's innings were over, Miyuki would be like, good job, great job, Furuya. And he'd be like, oh, thanks, all this. Sawamura, he recognizes and is self-aware. And he vocalizes it. That is the thing. He vocalizes it to Miyuki. He's like, that last ball was kind of high, wasn't it? And Miyuki's like, well, as long as you recognize it, I guess it's not anything to worry about. Yeah, Sawamura, he's self-aware. And May, at that moment, May recognizes Sawamura and goes, okay, last year wasn't a bluff. You are good. But here's the thing. He makes the notion that Furuya and Sawamura are working together to bring him down. That's what he says. He says, oh, so you and Furuya are going to work together to bring me down. Oh, I see. See, Miyuki, Mei is very smug about it. And he's making the comment, the way that he says that about Furuya and Sawamura, it's almost like it's just trying to stroke Mei's own ego, because Mei is suggesting that he's like, oh, well, separate, neither of you are better than me. You guys just have to work together to take me down. So Sato has to resort to using 2 pitchers to take me down all by my lonesome. Like, Mei's like trying to bolster his own confidence and boost his own ego by saying like, oh yeah, well, I'm much better than them because it's going to take 2 of them to try to bring me down. But I don't think that's the case. I think Sato has 2 pitchers who, yeah, they're a year behind Mei, and maybe they're not as equally as good as Mei, but they're really close. I feel like the thing of it is like, no, Sato has 2 really good pitchers that are having to split time because they're so good and they're that competitive with one another. Mei doesn't have that competition. So Mei is trying to bolster his own ego by saying, oh no, they just need 2 players to equal myself. So separated, they're not as strong as me. He's trying to tell himself that Sawamura is not as strong as Mei because he has to rely on working with Furuya. When the reality is, no, Sawamura and Furuya are both equally very strong and could be as strong as Mei, perhaps. They just have to work together because they're on the same team. And it's a team, right? So it's very interesting how he phrases that. But it's the top of the 8th. Haruichi's up. And Ryo has this whole thing about wanting Haruichi to meet up to his expectations. Ryo is a very stern brother with high standards. And I kind of like that about Ryo. I like that Ryo holds his brother to a very high standard. But he also wants Ryo to be his own person. Or he wants Haruichi to be his own person. And I love the little text that Zono and them send him where they're like, it's your birthday, look, Haruichi cut his bangs. He's like, about time. I like that Ryo, he's like, show me your path. He wants his brother to go on a different path than him and to carve his own way. And I love that. I love that Ryo has this like tough brotherly love. It's really cool. But Mei pitching, it's 151 miles per hour. And Furuya's on fire from the dugouts. And then the pitch count. And the 8th inning, the pitch count for Mei is only 82. That's insane. That's 8 innings in, it's only 82 pitches. Okay. I feel like Sawamura, though, during Senko's game was near that, wasn't it? Was his like maybe 97 or something? I feel like his pitching count was pretty similar too. Or maybe it was like 105. I don't think it was that far off. But yeah, chapter 290, Haruichi, he wants to go Koshin with the team, and he ends up getting struck out. And here's the thing. Tadano, bless his heart, Tadano's little heck yeah. It's like he's so innocent. He is so precious and he's earnest. That's the thing. It's not necessarily an innocence. It's an earnestness. He's very genuine and very earnest and kind. And there's not a bad bone in Tadano's body. He's very smart and he's a good strategist. He's not on Miyuki Harada's level, but he's good, right? He's very close, I feel. And he's just so earnest. He's just like, heck yeah. And it's like, aw. And then Ryo and Tetsu, all of them want to hit Mei's pitches. They're all like, that variety in his repertoire. I want to face him, right? It's great. But then Shirasu comes up. And I like that Itsuki is like, no, you need to stay on course. Like Mei, surprisingly, for as much of a diva as he is, he does kind of overthink and have doubts at times like Sawamura. Again, Mei and Sawamura, they're very similar in terms of that. He starts to have a little bit of doubt with everything, but then Itsuki is like, no. Itsuki tells him to stay on course. And he says, I have faith in you. It is like Tadano is trying to give Mei a hug, and Mei is acting like he's a cat trying to get a bath. He's just like, no, get the love away. Like he's been so damn tsundere, right? And Tadano's just like, let me love you. And Mei's like, no. Like Mei and Miyuki are very similar in regards to Mei shrugging off affection. Right? Is very similar, right? Miyuki, point with Miyuki. Miyuki can't take the mushy affection either. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how the approaches are in chapter 292. But yeah, so May's just like, no. He insults him. He's just like, no. He's like, come on, May. He's like, stay on course. You can do it. I have faith in you. He's like, puny little Itsuki. Like, I'm like, he is trying to help you, May. What are you doing? And he's like, the nerve. Like Tadano is all but saying, I love you. And May's like, the nerve you have, you knave. It's ridiculous. But Tadano, he is trying to rein May in. He's like trying to break May like a wild stallion. He's like, I'm gonna get you to do what I want you to do. And May's like, no. It's the funniest damn thing because yeah, May does not want to give up any control. And Tadano's like, you're gonna do it, right? And God, it's so great. I love this dynamic. And then chapter 291, mutual negation. We talked about the whole magnets thing. It comes out in this chapter, and I could not be happier. But yeah, Shirasui gets struck out. Miyuki comes up. It's Lupin the Third playing again. At this point, they're just like, we're just gonna play it as his theme the rest of the game. And Tadano, he cheers. He cheers for May. He praises May, right? He cheers and praises May. Like, sings his damn praises, right? He's talking about how awesome his pitch was. He's like, that was so awesome. He's cheering it. And May, all May can say is, he's like, quit standing out more than me. I'm like, damn it, May. And then Tadano is just like, it's okay. He's like, I'm just cheering you on because you did so well. I'm so excited. And May is like, you're killing my mood. I'm like, May, honey, I feel like for the longest time, I have been the biggest Harada and May shipper. But you know what? You know what I'm a sucker for? When a character is blatantly pouring their heart out with how much they love a character, and the other character's just like, no! Like trying to swing away all the hearts. I am the biggest sucker for that couple dynamic. Because you just know that person A is like pouring their heart and soul out, being like, I love you this much, let me love you. And person B is like X-simming it. And you're just waiting for that moment where that wall breaks down and they let the love in and just let it wash over them. That is this dynamic. That is the watermelon dynamic that we have here between Tadano in the green and May in the pink. Mm-hmm. I've been a big fan of Harada and May because Harada is a very stoic, strong. Harada could handle May. That's the thing. May respected Harada because he was a senpai. And May had the respect of Harada. And Harada knew how to read May and knew what to say to make May be like, okay, fine, whatever. I respect you. I'll do that. You do know what's best. Okay. I feel like Harada was really good about that. Like, May respected Harada. And so he listened to what Harada said and did what he said because he knew Harada was good. And he knew that, kind of like, May wanted to create the dream team, he knew Harada was very worthy of his respect and his attention. And Harada knew how to play May to where he would do what he wanted because he's like, you're kind of a brat, but I know what needs to happen, so just trust me and we'll go. Tadano, is just faith and love. And May's just like, what is this? It's something he's not used to, right? I love it. But Tadano's faith and love is just like Sawamura, right? Sawamura's faith and love, right? And we'll talk about that. But I just love that he's just like, you're killing my mood. And then Miyuki understands Tadano's excitement. He understands Tadano. Which is the funniest thing, I guess, because Tadano's a catcher. He's like, I know, how exciting it must be for that perfect pitch to come to you in that late part of the game. I was all but waiting for Miyuki to talk about Sawamura and how Sawamura in the Senko game pitched exactly what he wanted. I was waiting for that, for him to just confirm it. But that, I guess Terajima was like, that's too far. That's too much admission, right? That Miyuki understands Tadano's feelings. But here's the thing. He says that I had the choice to oppose May, and it was the right decision. How he words this, because you are the best pitcher of our age group. There's a little moment there, right, where he acknowledges, he is like, May, he says that May is the best, and I'm going to paraphrase, third year pitcher. You're the best of our age group. He doesn't say the best in Tokyo. He doesn't say the best of a generation. He says you're the best in our age group. You're the best of our year. You are the best pitcher. And here's the thing. Miyuki's like, I didn't want to join you because you don't challenge me. You don't make me grow. He's like, you and I would just be stagnant. It would be mutual negation. We would be two ends of a magnet that would never come together. We would not grow. You would just be a diva, and I would not make you any better because we would just be at the same level, constantly butting heads, and each of us wanting control that neither of us would get. And it would clash too much. We talked about it last volume. He's like, that would not work. But as soon as he says the best pitcher of our age, what do we cut to? We cut to Sawamura. Right after that, where Sawamura is there, and Sawamura is cheering on Miyuki, singing his praises just like Tadano. And Sawamura's like, you can do it, Cap, come on, let's go for seconds. I don't think it's coincidence that Miyuki says, I couldn't join you because you're the best of our year, and then we cut to Sawamura, who's a year younger, who's in a different age bracket. So Miyuki's not necessarily saying that May is better than Sawamura, but he's saying he's the best of his age. The best of that. The best third year pitcher in Miyuki's mind is May. Now, does he think that May will be the best of all time? Maybe. And I'm sure somebody could argue and say, no, he meant of all the pitchers in all high school. Sure. But Miyuki's not swinging, and Amahisa's like, I know why. And Amahisa's like, it's so frustrating. Miyuki is the last boss. It's very frustrating why he's not switching. And Amahisa's like, with Miyuki, you can't read him. And that's what's so hard, which is so true of Miyuki. He's very hard to read. He's just a hard to read person off the field. He's hard to read on the field. And Amahisa's like, that's what's so frustrating about him, is that you just don't know what he's thinking. But here's the thing. Miyuki just gave this big spiel about why him and May would never work. May says that Miyuki always has a plan and goes for the throat. He's like, Miyuki is ruthless. He has a plan, and that is why I wanted him. It's an unrequited love story with May and Miyuki. It is an unrequited love story, and this is why they are exes, because May still is all about Miyuki. He's like, we could have been on the same team. He's like, I wanted you. Why did you turn me down? What's the deal? May has this like unrequited love story with Miyuki, and Miyuki's just like, we wouldn't have worked. Nope. He's like, I respect May. He's my rival, but would never have worked out. May's like, but what if it could? And so there's that angle to it, right? And the thing of it is like, he's sitting here lamenting why Miyuki would not complete his dream team and being like, why couldn't I just have this one piece of the puzzle? And then it cuts to Tadano being like, I'm here for you. I have faith in you. Give me your best pitch. I'm waiting for you. I'm just like, you could not be more plain, Terajima. That Tadano is like, I am waiting for you. It's like, May, the writing on the wall. Tadano is sitting here waiting for you and pouring his love out for you, and you're focused on something that is never going to love you back the same way. The fan fiction writes itself. So I was just like, in this chapter, I'm like, did I just switch and become a Tadano and May shipper? Did this just happen? Like, I'm a multi-shipper, so I can ship multiple couples in any series. But I'm like, I still like my Harada and May ship for what it is. But until this chapter, I was not sold on May and Tadano. And then this chapter came along and I was like, no, May, you need to ditch. Miyuki don't care about you no more. He's never cared about you that way. You see what's right in front of you that's waiting for you. Oh my God. Like, he just wants to help May. And then vice versa, Tadano just wants to help May to be the best he can be. And then we have Miyuki say, you guys, he wants to help Furuya and Sawamura be the best. He wants to help them be the best. And he had to say Furuya and Sawamura because if he just said Sawamura, I could see somebody in the audience being like, well, why didn't he say Furuya? And then it would be like, well, Terajima's master shipping plan is out. So, can't have that. But then chapter 292, The Shape of Duos. So, The Shape of Duos, Mei's team is, Mei's team before, what does it say? He says that Mei's team, I'm trying to like look at my notes here. There's that shot of Mei and Miyuki and their teams after the grade school game, right? And we see that it's Mei's team that won. Mei's team won the game because Miyuki, all of his team members are like sad and walking away, and Miyuki looks back to Mei, and Mei is like, has his hat off like he's gonna say like, eh. And then we see that Mei's team's all celebratory. So whatever that game was in the past, Mei's team won. And Miyuki just has this little scowl on his face like, I want to beat you. Right? Miyuki's had this rivalry with Mei. He's wanted to beat him all along. He's not been able to. And that's been the biggest challenge, is that he's not been able to beat Mei. Not in grade school, not last year. This is his chance and he wants to take it, right? But Tadano, he's like, I'm waiting for your best pitch. And then Miyuki hits it, and that was such a good shot. That double spread was so good. But he hits it right to Carlos, and Carlos gets him out. And Mei just has that victory pose like, I did it. Look at me. And Miyuki was so mad. He was like GDing and everything, like so mad about it. And it was Mei's top speed of the day, 153 kilometers per hour. And then here's the thing. Mei, he kind of has a little moment here where he gets on to Tadano. He's like, don't sell Kazuya short. He's like, you were trying to make assumptions about Miyuki. Don't do that. He's not someone you can make assumptions about. Like, he defends Miyuki a lot, right? But then he's like, he warns him not to sell him short. But he says, your ambitiousness and earnestness got through. And he gives Mei the bump. He gives Tadano the bump, right? He gives him the bump. He gives him it, right? And so I love it. He's like, I'm counting on you, Tadano. And I was like, oh. And then Tadano, of course, is instantly clingy. Because Mei says that he's counting on him. Says he's counting on him. And he's like, okay, yeah. And like Tadano's just like, oh. And I love that Fukuda's in the background. Like, I feel like Fukuda and Kuramochi are both like the wingmen. Would be the wingman. Like, Kuramochi would so be a wingman for Miyuki and Sawamura, and Fukuda would so be a wingman for Tadano and Mei. Fukuda's just like, Fukuda's like, I'm gonna make you Captain Tadano, but Mei will be gone, so that's a sad thing. But it's like, it's so good. But here's the thing. It cuts right after that. Like, Terajima, we ain't blind, right? It cuts right after Mei being like, I'm counting on you, though, so whatever. And Tadano's like, and gets all clingy. Cuts right to that. To Sawamura being clingy all over Miyuki, right? Coincidence? I think not, right? So it shows him being clingy onto Miyuki, but it is a different kind of clingy, right? Tadano's clingy is like all mushy-gushy and like, oh, Mei, and singing his praises, which is what Mei loves. Mei loves people praising him. So this is why they're so perfect. Because I just have gone into shipper heaven, so y'all will have to excuse me. But Mei wants somebody to praise him and to, believe in him and have faith in all of his pitches and let him, like, have control. And Tadano's like, yes, I am that person. Notice me, senpai. And so Mei's like, oh, well, I guess. And then Sawamura, Miyuki doesn't want somebody like that. Miyuki wants somebody that's going to challenge him, right? Challenge him. And so Sawamura is clingy with Miyuki, but it's a different kind of clingy. He's trying to cheer him up, right? He's like, oh, Cap, come on. You tried your best. You did your best you could, trying to cheer him up and be clingy, but he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's like, well, but Mei was better than you, so I guess that was a good play on Tadano's part. And Miyuki's like, you're just making me mad. But Sawamura is just, he's blunt, and he tells Miyuki to switch gears. He's like, hey, this was a bad deal, but now we gotta switch gears. And Miyuki's like, I know. And Sawamura, he's like, okay. And here's the thing, Miyuki's like, I know what I have to do, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's kind of defensive about it. And then Zono's like, that's right, we still have another inning to go. They still got another inning at bat. We can do this. And Sawamura's like, yeah. He's like, I'm getting all hyped up about it. And when they go out to the field, it cuts to Miyuki. And he's smiling like, okay. It's Sawamura is exactly what Miyuki needs. Miyuki needs somebody that is a ray of sunshine that will give praise to Miyuki, notice me senpai, but that also is self-sufficient and doesn't need Miyuki to control him. Mei would need Miyuki to control him, and Mei would think that he would want to control Miyuki, so it would never work out. Sawamura can calm himself down. He doesn't need Miyuki to coddle him. He's got this now. And he can calm Miyuki down and like get him and be like, no, let's do this. Like Sawamura doesn't sugarcoat. Miyuki doesn't want sugarcoat. They work well together. They just need to work on that whole communication aspect. And then Mei, he wants somebody that's going to praise him and have faith in him and let him take control, but also be able to handle him. And Tadano was getting to that point. Tadano was like, I do have faith in you, but you're going to do things my way too, right? I'm going to be earnest and thorough. It's so good. It's so good, damn it. I love it. And then Kunitomo. Meanwhile, while all this is happening and Miyuki's smiling as Sawamura walks away, I'm like, smile while he's looking at you, damn it. While that's happening, Kunitomo's having a powwow, and they're all like closing their eyes and imagining things like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles before they go face Shredder. Like, they all got that going on. And he's like, Sawamura is no longer the pitcher we thought he was. So we have to handle him differently, but he is capable of being overcome. And I do like that Kunitomo says, I have faith in your abilities. I have faith in you. And then we have the little inner monologue where Kunitomo's like, I have faith in you all so much. It's like, and then we come back to Shirakawa, and Shirakawa's like, Kunitomo has faith in us, but he's like, Sawamura, you've not surpassed Mei Naramiya yet. And that's the thing. Sawamura doesn't want to surpass Mei. He just wants to help his team win. And the most cute thing that's happening while this whole Zen powwow is going on with Kunitomo and the team is that Sawamura is like looking at the mound. He's like, oh, this is the length of Mei's stride. I love that Sawamura is always thinking about other pitchers and incorporating it into himself. Like Furuya does that a little bit, mainly with Hongo, because that's his kind of rival. That's his Amahisa, I guess, which poor Furuya, because Hongo's like such a turd. But Sawamura is like, he always is thinking, he wants to talk to Amahisa, learn about new pitches. He's learning about Mei's stride. Like, Sawamura is always on the path of self-improvement. Like Mei, just the non-diva version of him. The Taurus to his Capricorn. This volume that I've talked for like over an hour about. I really love this volume. It cements to me the Mei Tadano and Miyuki Sawamura ships, but also that Miyuki feels really comfortable with Furuya, and I want Miyuki's comfort level with Furuya to be that with Sawamura. Please. Please. But again, I think that Miyuki's kind of afraid that Sawamura is going to crack through the shell, and Miyuki's like, I'm not ready for that. Get ready. So, thank you all for indulging me in Whiteboard-kun. Thank you for indulging me with Whiteboard-kun if you've stuck out this long. And for my giant ship rant that I went on with this volume. But how could we not? Ever since chapter 256, it's BL. So, how could I not ship? So, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. I'm really excited. Next volume, we're caught up. Almost. Volume 34 will be caught up fully. The next volume is going to be the last one I can read for a little bit. So, and we're in the 8th inning. We're in the bottom of the 8th. We just have one inning after this. We're getting close to the end of this game, y'all. And I don't know what to think. So, I don't know what to think. But I'm really nervous. So, but we'll see. Maybe things will be fine, right? They're still up by 1. Knock on wood. So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week with volume 33 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2.